right, welcome back to another episode of Every Day is Saturday. I'm your host, Brad Gatto. I'm missing my normal co-host, Matt Stahl. But that's because I replaced him with two other people that I'm super excited to introduce to all of you in just a second. But from time to time, if you are a regular listener of Every Day is Saturday, you will know that we bring in some of the families that we have an opportunity to partner with here at Fiat because they just have interesting stories. And I think it's helpful in kind of this back half of life, the descent down the mountain, as we talk about all the time, to figure out how people are living their life intentionally. I think it's important for anybody at any age to live their life intentionally. But I also know that a lot of people's identity in life is wrapped up in their work and what they do for a living. And when you retire, sometimes it's hard to find that identity. And every now and again, we meet families that we think are living the everyday Saturday lifestyle and doing it in rockstar fashion. And so today I have with me Denny and Skip Stromberg. Ann and Skip have an amazing story. I'm not going to steal their thunder and let you know what their story is. I'm going to ask them to share their story with you. But I've got Ann and Skip here with me today to share their story. So Ann and Skip, thanks so much for being here and recording this episode with us.
Good to be with you.
Thanks for having us.
And we got you in studio in Fiat office, which is rare that you're actually here. And I'll let you kind of use that as your lead in to begin the part of your retirement story. But before we get there, I'm going to back up a little bit. So if you would tell a little bit of your pre-retirement story. So what did you guys do? Like, tell us a little bit about your family and all that kind of stuff. Get us to retirement before we get to tell this retirement story.
Skip and I have been married coming up on 15 years. And most of my career was as an independent consultant in the healthcare industry. My sweet spot was business process, doing process reengineering, training, documentation, and just helping companies work smarter and understand along sort of a chain of events how people needed to work together to create whatever the outcome needed to be. So I did that as an independent most of my career and loved it. I have two sons. And I'll tell about them. You can tell about yours. And so they're grown, they're launched. One lives here in the Twin Cities. One lives in Los Angeles. So, and neither are married, but both have girlfriends. So nice. Maybe there'll be marriages in the future. I don't know.
How'd your son end up in LA?
He is a creative by heart. This is my youngest. And so he designs clothing. He designs things on websites. He designs furniture. He paints. He does everything. And so LA is his kind of vibe.
He has a very opposite brain than I do. Thank God that there are people out there like that. But you, Skip?
Well, the main part of my working years was in sales and marketing. I was a small entrepreneur with some various business startups over the course of my career, mostly in the agricultural field, selling to farmers and veterinarians, and enjoyed that very much. The latter part of my working years, I was actually selling doors and windows for Home Depot, which was kind of a natural for me because I generaled out a couple of homes for myself in previous lives. So it was a good end to my working years. And I have a daughter who lives in Minnesota here, single. My son, Eric, lives down in Sarasota, Florida. He's a pharmacist working for a hospital system in Sarasota, Florida. So that kind of gets us thinking about Florida for some of our retirement years in the wintertime. So.
Well, your kids did do a very good job of centralizing themselves for you guys. You got one in California and one in Florida and some right in between.
And we do have to say we have a wonderful daughter-in-law who's in Florida. So Eric is married to Haley and she's just a joy.
Thinking about you GCing a couple of your own projects, another thing that, thank God there's people that have that type of brain, because my wife and I are starting a remodel right now and I'm already over it. And there has not been one thing torn out, not one nail has been pounded, and I'm done. So God bless you for being able to do that. Yeah. That's another skill that I don't have.
He's very handy, which plays into our story. So
yes. So with that said, when did you guys actually retire?
Well, I think I'm approaching 3 years come November.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're 2 years about now.
2 years in July. Yeah.
So we didn't retire at the same time. So there was a good stretch of time when I was not working and was working We didn't like it. I didn't like it. Got a little bored. Along that line, we started thinking about, well, actually, we were thinking about, do we want to get a lake home and spend some time up there? And we kind of ruled that out because of a lot of complications with owning a second property.
Sure.
And this segued into traveling in an RV.
It's natural segue.
Yeah, with that
lake
let's
home.
put wheels under the house, and you can. But one of our things is, Anne, as I got to know her, she loves to travel, and I traveled too much in business and previous lives. But recreational travel, we both have thoroughly enjoyed together. The idea of traveling the country, putting new pins in the map, flying low, and getting to see things on the ground has turned into a tremendous blessing because we just are wowed everywhere and so far.
Yeah.
Did you call it flying low?
Flying low.
AKA driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
on wheels, house on wheels.
Yeah. So, and you retired 2 years ago, you said?
I retired 2 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the sort of, I'll lay out the story because it's the timing of my retirement played in entirely to how we ended up doing what we're doing now.
Okay.
So we had been thinking about, should we go to Lake Home, buy Lake Home? And instead we rented a mini Winnie and we went up to Lake Superior for just a long weekend to see what it was like to be in an RV and try that out. And we thought, well, this is kind of fun. Maybe we could do this. And then I was at a women's brunch where the hostess asked, well, how will your life look different in the next 5 years or so? And I said, well, I hope Skip and I will be traveling a lot. And I think it might be in an RV. And she said to me, oh, I have to introduce you to Jenny and Don and tell you about Sowers. So Sowers is a ministry and it stands for Servants on Wheels Ever Ready, SOWER. And these are retired couples who travel the country in their RV. And we serve as volunteer property staff at Christian youth camps, retreats, and schools and such places that proclaim the gospel. And so we thought, that sounds really cool. And Skip is unbelievably DIY handy, can fix anything, just very talented. And so we thought, well, let's experiment and try that. So I asked my company for a leave of absence for a month. Never thought they'd say yes, but they said yes. And we were planning to go to Texas and rent an RV down there until a friend of Skip's offered to loan us his RV in Florida.
Honey, we're going to Florida.
Yeah. He got off the phone with Mark and he said, honey, we're going to Florida. But as it turned out, we would have been in Texas during their deep freeze a couple years ago. So that was a God thing that we just completely missed that. Got to go to Florida, had a friend who loaned us an RV. I had a leave of absence. I mean, God's fingerprints were all over it. And so we went and we tried this Sower project. You work for 3 weeks at a time, Monday through Thursdays. And we liked it a lot. And we came home from that and said, let's buy an RV. And I thought I'd work at least another year. But then the company that I was working for, the very last part of my career, I actually was an employee for a startup called Bind Benefits. And they were purchased by United Health. And I thought that was not what I wanted to do. So that was a really good point in time to make an exit. And so I retired in July of 21. And
so when was it that you did the Florida trip?
March of 21.
March of 21.
Yep.
So you ended up with an RV through a friend. You ended up in Florida, not Texas. What was just out of curiosity, when you went, was the Sower ministry in Florida that you did?
Yes, it was actually in Vero Beach on the Atlantic side. And we met up with about 8 other couples at that site. So it was a fairly good sized group, and they were from all around the country. Many of them are full-time RVers. So we heard their stories and what it was like to sell your home, live in an RV. We don't think we're ready for that, but it's kind of in the back of our minds as we ease into this more and more.
So what was the project you worked on down there?
Well, it was a youth camp, Christian youth camp in Vero Beach. And so I was mostly engaged remodeling cabins, doing a lot of bathroom plumbing and some electrical work was the main part of my activity down there during that time.
So you guys, the sower, and I think you mentioned this. I just want to make sure it's clear to the listeners. So you go, you work for 3 weeks, and then, but you wherever you stay, they've got, obviously because it's for RV, retired RV hookups. They have all the hookups.
Yep.
They're set up ready for you, crazy RVers, to come in and serve for 3 weeks, but then you get to stay there for another week.
Yes,
we do.
It's really sweet because the hookups are free, and we can stay an extra week. The beauty of this strategy is we get to see the country traveling to the project.
Yeah.
We've got 3-day weekends in between, so we can tour the area and get to know it better. And then there's a week in between projects where we can either see the country traveling to the next project, or we can stay there for another week just to kill some time. And so it's just a terrific strategy we're working 24 hours a week, so it's not real stressful, and it's working really well.
And it's 24 hours for the guys. The women work 3 hours a day, the men 6. So this is one time I'm fine with gender bias. So we only have to work 12 hours a week, which is kind of sweet for the women. And then so I have a little bit more playtime than Skip does. But you work with other faith-filled couples and you meet wonderful people. And it's kind of like when you went to camp as a kid, where you made some instant friends, and not everybody, bonds with everybody. Some projects you might just have one other couple, or you might even be the only couple on a project, or you might be at a project with 10 couples. And so they all vary. And people come from all over the country to do this. I got a little statistics today from one of our board members. There are about 670 active couples in this ministry, and there are about 170 active projects that are all over, and even maybe a half a dozen of those are in Canada.
Wow.
So, and a lot of them are in Florida and Texas and Arizona because, snowbirds want to be somewhere warmer. And we've done that. We were in Florida. We've been in Arizona. This year we were in Texas. But then there's projects here in Minnesota and Michigan and Alaska and pretty much everywhere you can find a project.
Wow. So you guys did the one project, came back, you actually took a lot, I would say a lot of time. I tend to make decisions quickly, but you were able to borrow an RV, did the project, realized this is something that we want to do. You ended up buying your own RV. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that, because I do think that the listeners, especially if they're thinking about this whole RVing thing, because that's a big commitment. That's a big financial commitment, number one.
Well, not only that, it's a little intimidating for me thinking about pulling a fifth wheel trailer.
Okay, so you guys did a fifth wheel, not like a coach.
Yeah, and that was part of our research process of renting and trying out. And then we decided that a fifth wheel trailer was really going to work best for us. So through the sower ministry, in their newsletter, we found a fellow sower couple down in Charlotte, North Carolina, who had their rig for sale. And it was a turnkey deal with a Ram 3500 diesel truck and a three-year-old fifth wheel trailer. And the truck was 3 years old. So it had some good depreciation on it, but still in really nice condition. And so I flew down there and picked it up. And that was the scary part. The idea of maneuvering a big trailer. I mean, it's 16,000 pounds and 34 feet. And I was nervous as a red squirrel, hitting the road and driving through the Smoky Mountains to get back home. My brother joined me to ride shotgun and, getting close to a fuel pump, zipping around through the Walmart parking lot, challenging. And so we had some scary moments, some close calls, but really felt the Spirit was with us and protecting us along the way. And I've got a few stories that are kind of testaments to how God's watching over us on the highway. And you value that very much. So
I've always thought it was I've got a lot of family back in Iowa that are in farming or in the farm community, and the equipment that they drive around and the things that they do. And most farmers, as you would assume, have CDLs, or professional licenses. And they always make that joke that there's people driving around in these fifth wheels, these massive fifth wheels and these big coaches, that sometimes these coaches are more than $500,000. And you don't need anything other than a normal license to drive this stuff.
Which is crazy. Some states you do,
California, you need.
Okay.
yeah, some states.
So you drove down there, picked it up, and that was
May of 21.
May of 21.
So then that summer, we did a couple of just local state park trips just to sort of start learning about it and feeling our way through. And then in the fall, we spent about, like 3 weeks driving our way out to New England through the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, more of Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York to Massachusetts, where we served on a solar project in sort of central Massachusetts.
So since August of 21, for almost the last 2 years at this point, how many trips have you taken? And so how often are you gone and how often are you kind of home?
We kind of built up the length of the trips. The first big trip was out west to Jackson, Wyoming. And so we toured out there. That was purely recreational, but it gave us an experience of 4 or 5 weeks on the road and getting to know the equipment better. I can tell you, if it wasn't for YouTube, I would not have had the success because I spent so much time learning the ins and outs of RV maintenance
on YouTube.
But it's been fun. It's been a great activity, and fixing things, figuring things out has been a part of the traveling and enjoyment. So anyhow, we got back from that Wyoming trip, and then we were geared up to go to
then we did
Arizona.
Then we did the Massachusetts. So we did the August trip just to kind of get our feet wet. And then we did the Massachusetts trip out through, as I said, and then we were in Massachusetts. And after that project, we meandered our way all the way down to Texas. We went through Gettysburg and spent 4 really important days there.
Wow.
And then I just think every American should see Gettysburg. It's so much part of our history. And then we made our way through Virginia and Arkansas.
Across Tennessee.
Virginia, Arkansas, down to Texas, where we left our rig. I have cousins who have ranch property there, so they let us park it there. So that was kind of our first year. And then in our second year, we picked it up in Texas, and we went to a project in Arizona. And then we left the rig in Arizona. That project was at a Christian school called Push Ridge Christian Academy, which was just a phenomenal place. I felt like if every kid in our country could have that education, we'd be a different country.
Sure.
It was really inspiring. And then we came home for a few weeks to be home around Easter. And then we went back out and we went to Colorado and we served in a project there. And then we came home.
That was after traveling the Mighty 5 national parks in Utah. And so we did spend a good month recreational traveling and seeing these beautiful state national parks and ending up in Colorado Springs for our June project.
And that's kind of how we do it. We combine pleasure travel with sower ministry travel, and it just fills us up.
Yeah.
It really, the motto is traveling with a purpose, RVing with a purpose. And that's what's really made this click for us, because we're serving, but we're also enjoying time together, a lot of time together, 24/7, right, honey?
Yeah.
But, man,
and the beautiful thing about that, I just have to say, is that we're closer than ever. And I know it could have gone the other way, but it's worked for us. It's really worked for us.
That's awesome. So give me now that you've been at it for a couple of years, what's the next 5 years look like for you guys, do you think? What do you got planned out? What are your thoughts?
We're trying to figure out how to get that thing to Hawaii.
You have to fly a little higher. You're not going to be able to fly low.
we are planning to head west here mid-August, and that's going to be one project in Idaho. Okay. And that'll be about a 6-week trip. We're back mid-October.
I'm going to interrupt, though, and say, and on the way back, we're going to go through Glacier National Park, because that's a highlight for me. I want to do that.
Sure. But then we're back mid-October, and we'll be here through Christmas. And then we're heading to Florida for a good 3 months. And we'll be within about an hour of Camp of St. Pete. So we'll be close to my son and daughter-in-law, which will be nice. We really, we experienced Texas this last winter, loved it. We experienced Arizona the year before, love that. And now we want to really get to know Florida and see if that's a location where we might commit more time, maybe a second home. We kind of we're talking about changing our domicile to a tax-free state like Florida.
Why would you do that?
Liking the sound of that. And so we're going to get to know Florida here. What's that like to spend 3 months in the wintertime and enjoy that? And we've got 3 solar projects in that area. So we'll be busy and we'll have time to see my son and daughter-in-law and get to know Florida better.
And after that, then we're going to do some pleasure travel through the Carolinas and Virginia and Tennessee. But to your longer question, 5 years out, what does this look like? 2 answers to that. We don't know. God knows. I mean, This is a season, and we don't know if this is a 1 more year season or 10 more year season. What we do know is that we're loving it. And there's a lot of places in this country we still want to see and projects that we want to serve on. And we seem to be adopting sort of a January through May, mid-May-ish schedule so that we're gone for the winter and the cold. And then we think we'll be home for some of the summer months like we are right now. And then we think we might go back out for some of the fall months, which we're planning to do this year and probably will next. And then kind of be here for the holidays.
Yeah.
I think all told, we will be in Minnesota about 4 months this year. So we will have been out for 8. So we feel like we shouldn't have to pay taxes, but Minnesota makes it very hard, especially for RVers, because you can't prove that you are permanently planted somewhere. And the whole point for us is we don't want to be planted. We want to travel.
Yeah.
And we don't want to sell our home, at least not right now.
Not yet.
We like having a port to pull into, and who knows what might come up in the near future where we'll need to be home. So we're hanging on to the house and doing as much travel as we can, and just kind of take it a trip at a time and see how it's working.
Yeah. So what would be what over the last couple of years, what's been kind of the biggest blessing that you've had that wasn't expected? Just kind of one of the, gosh, didn't see this coming. And then what's been the biggest challenge?
I think the friendships we've made has been a real highlight for me. When you're working with a group of men on a project for 3 weeks, you kind of bond together. A lot of bantering back and forth, which I'm known for. And it's just been, really, really good friendships. And that's been the greatest part. The challenge has really been keeping that rig on the road, getting in front of maintenance, because the last thing I want to experience is blowouts on the freeway and other mechanical issues. We've had a few to deal with, but we've worked through them, and it's worked out. But the challenge has been just the mechanical and the safety issues associated with that kind of travel.
And for me, I would echo the friendships, but I would also say seeing the beauty of creation. That just fills my soul. And being in red canyons like in the Southwest is my favorite. I love to hike. So we've had the privilege, as Skip said, of being in these incredible Utah parks, national parks. This year we were in Big Bend. We were in Palo Duro Canyon in Texas and Caprock Canyon. And we've been in just incredible places where we see such beauty. And that just fills me up. And I will brag on my husband and say he's done an incredible job of learning about and taking care of the rig, which then allows me to relax.
Yeah.
I wasn't as relaxed when we started.
Oh, no.
Well, you only have to work 3 hours a day.
Well, yeah. But
So that's part of his 6 hours.
Long, so I'm getting better at not doing that. And I think the challenge is I'm quite an extrovert and I have a lot of friends and love community and connection. So some of it's hard for me to be gone. I am part of the Wooddale Choir and I love singing. So I miss that.
Oh.
I really do. But we have been privileged to meet other really wonderful people. And so that's how God just shows up and fills my cup with new friends.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is when you started on the road, you also started a blog. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's called With Gratitude, right?
Withgratitude.life
is the actual URL,
Yep.
right? And I was looking at it prior to our podcast today, over the last couple of years, you've got about 50, 60 posts out there. So about a couple times a month on average, it looks like you're putting stuff out on the blog. Tell me why you started a blog in the first place and kind of what that's meant to you over the last couple of years in your adventures.
It's been a way to share what we are experiencing with friends and family. We talk about sharing joy and beauty and hope. And I love to write, and we take all kinds of pictures. So it sort of is, it documents what we've been doing. And then I make books out of that as gifts for my husband for Christmas. But it's a way to stay connected. And when people respond with comments and stuff, that just also is a blessing for me, because I just feel that connection of people who are following along. And it's a way to also share faith without being in your face, but just sort of reflecting on what we're experiencing and learning, and always just seeing so much beauty.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. In all of the different blog posts that you've put out there, what do you tend to focus on, or is it just the experiences themselves? I mean, what's kind of your goal in putting that out there? Or if you could give maybe advice to other people that are out there experiencing life the way that you guys are and have not started a blog, maybe some advice to them as well.
Well, I think if I think about the few that I've written, it's required real inspiration. And
Yes.
The first one was a very close call with a dump truck that was heading right for my front bumper. And it was a really close call, and it happened in an instant, and I was struck by it. And so I wrote about that experience and shared it with our community Bible study group as kind of a testimonial of sorts, and just to share how we felt the Spirit was protecting us. And then I had a recent one where I had a chance to visit an area in Colorado where my dad's brother, Robert Stromberg, was killed towards the end of the war in northern Italy. And there's a 10th Mountain Division training camp in Colorado that we went and saw. And that was just a real moving experience for me to walk that ground and then write about it. So that was my contribution. Anne's the prolific writer, and she finds all kinds of inspiration. She can probably share a little bit about that.
I just try and write about, I try not to focus on us as much as what we are seeing and experiencing that might be uplifting to others. I don't want to just write to write. I try and wait till I have something that I think, that I hope will touch some other people. And it's not like it's hugely followed. I'd say we have about 70 people 70, 80 users or so. And I'd say on average, maybe 30 to 40 people read it. And again, it's just about connection and sharing. And we've had wonderful response. I mean, people have been saying, when are you going to start writing again? When are you going to start writing again? So sometimes it's a lot of work. And I think, do I really want to do this? But people have commented that it's been a joy to follow along. And I always kind of end with, hope you'll come along for the ride. And that's my intent, is to bring people along and share in these experiences.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And you guys, your story is, for me, it's so fun to listen to. And my hope in having you guys on the episode today was allowing other people to hear how, I'm going to use 3 words that you've used that stood out to me: how you've stayed connected, how you've found purpose, and how you've incorporated a servant mindset or servanthood or giving into kind of this phase of life, into your retirement. And I would argue it's those 3 things, because the joy comes out in your story. I mean, you can hear it in your tone of voice that you guys are obviously having the time of your life doing what you're doing. And everybody wants that to be their retirement, right? They don't want to get to retirement and just, I mean, not that Netflix isn't fun sometimes, but like just sit around and watch Netflix all day, because like Skip said, when you're doing it by yourself, it's not very fun. You got bored pretty quick, right? And so my argument would be that the reason that the joy comes out and you guys are living your best life or living your everyday as Saturday is because you found a way to stay connected through that blog, which is amazing. You found purpose in what you're doing, and you've been able to serve at the same time and have fun.
Yeah, and if I might add, Brad, I had no idea what retirement was going to look like. And I look back on the last couple of years, and I'm just amazed this is the best. I'm having the best time of my life. And it's because we're retired and we're traveling with a purpose and we're serving and seeing the beauty of the country. I just can't imagine what I'd be doing if it wasn't for this lifestyle that we've chosen and activities. So it's just been marvelous.
And we hope we can do it for a long time. I also want to say that this is answered prayer because at least a decade ago, I started praying that when it came to our retirement, that Skip and I would find some kind of shared purpose. Because I had watched retired couples where they would go in different directions. You know, she would have her volunteering and her purpose, and he would have his. And, you know, that's true of our careers as well. We go different paths, but it seemed like for retirement, for my heart, I wanted us to have something that we could really serve in together and share in together. And what I love about Sowers is it totally uses Skip's strengths. I mean, he is so good at fixing and building and doing and solving. I will be candid and say that, you know, cleaning and landscaping and painting are not intrinsically joyful for me, but I feel like there's just so much benefit in how the ministry works and the friendships and the servanthood and all that we've already described. And so I kind of swallow some of the parts that I'm not quite as happy about or just don't love as much, but I know that it just fills up Skip, and that gives me joy as well.
Yeah. Choice.
That's one of his sayings. Love is a choice.
Is a choice.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just it's a wonderful story. And I would love to, I think everything we just got done talking about came through very clearly. The fact that that connection, that purpose, and that servanthood and what you guys are doing together is amazing. I had a lot of fun. I actually learned a lot more today than I already knew, which is fun for me. But I got to hear a little bit of this story. And the second you guys even gave me kind of a snippet of it, I was like, other people just kind of need to hear what it is that you're doing. One of the hardest parts of our job here at Fiat and serving the families that we work with has nothing to do with their investment accounts or how they're performing or anything like that. It's helping people find purpose in the financial aspect of their life, because love it or hate it, money affects everything that we do. And purpose is hard for anybody, whether you're a teenager trying to figure out junior high, or you're trying to, you're post-college and you're trying to figure out what your career is going to be, or you get into retirement and now you're trying to figure out this phase of life. We're always seeking purpose in life. And I think one of the biggest differences between a job and a career is somebody that finds purpose in what they do. You're going to get paid in both, right? But the difference between feeling like it's a career is that you find purpose, and you need to find ways to do that in retirement. And you guys have, whether you feel like it's God-led, or you tripped into it, you stumbled into it, or whatever, however you got to where you're at and you ended up RVing or flying low, as Skip said at the beginning. It's just a wonderful story, and it obviously has impacted you guys in a really cool way. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your 4 months that you're actually in Minnesota, one of those days, and it happens to be a nice day in Minnesota, to take time to come tell our listeners a little bit about your story. So thanks for coming in, guys.
Delighted.
Delighted. And I want to encourage people, if they want to learn more about Sower Ministry, that URL is Sower, SOWER ministry.org. So I hope some of your other families might be interested and check it out, because it's a really wonderful part of our lives.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I did some homework on it too. We will put the link to Sower Ministries in the show notes. So if you want that link, sowerministry.org, we'll put and Skip's blog out there as well with gratitude.life. So you can check that out if you want to check that out. Living an everyday Saturday life means a lot of different things, and it can mean different things to different people. It's a joy to be able to serve your family and especially be a part of your story in a very small way. And so thanks again for being here. Thanks again for letting us serve you here at Fiat. If you are new to the podcast, like I said at the very beginning, we from time to time have an opportunity to have families like Skip and Ann come in and share their stories with us, alongside all kinds of different episodes. And so if you've not yet subscribed to the podcast, we'd encourage you to do so. Share with your friends, your family, wherever you find a podcast, we will be there. We would love to have you along for the ride here at Fiat as well. So with that being said, enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you all next Saturday.
Thank you for listening to Every Day is Saturday. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Fiat Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. the content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.